Well, look, I'm delighted to say now we're joined by Nickey Brennan, former GAA President, former Kilkenny player, manager, an all-round good guy, I suppose. Nickey, how are you?
Very good, Shane, for that introduction. Sure, it's a good morning. Hi, Michael.
What?
Hello, Michael.
Nickey, how are you?
All right.
What did you make of the hurling weekend, Nickey?
Sure, it was fantastic, to be fair. I mean, Leinster, the poor province over here in the east that nobody thinks is any good at all, covered up a lovely final day, 3 games in their own way. I suppose for many, I feel very sorry that people who were hoping to see Kilkenny and Wexford and weren't at the game couldn't see it anywhere. And when we saw it last night on the Sunday game, we had one old dodgy error. So I feel sorry for those that missed the cracking game. I can't understand how it wasn't at least put on GAA Go, but such as is. But look, were brilliant in the end. Martin got their noses ahead at the right time. Dublin, Galway, a very competitive game. I saw that. I was watching the other one. And fairness to Antrim and Westmeath, it was also very competitive. And sure, to be fair to Munster, it hasn't disappointed all year. 2 fantastic matches and a great way to wrap up the finale of the round robin series. It must be said, it has been pretty decent, really. And I suppose in many ways it shows that. And it's not now is the time not to do it, but clearly it's going to throw a bit of spotlight on the league for the shadow boxing that it is, really, to be honest about it. But for another day. But yeah, it's been very good so far. And look, the main course is probably still to come.
Nickey, just on Kilkenny and Wexford, like, I couldn't believe that there was nowhere to watch this game. Terrestrial television, I couldn't believe that it wasn't the chosen game for RTE, given that, you know, what was at stake for Wexford. And obviously it's Wexford, Kilkenny. The games have been absolutely superb the last couple of years. Like, what are your own thoughts on that? To me, it's a mystifying decision by the national broadcaster not to air that game. And for it then to at least not be on GAA Go is very, very disappointing.
Yeah, Michael, I'm with you 100%. It was a terrible decision. I don't know who made the decision, but not having it on GAA Go at least, I think somebody got to answer for that. I mean, Kilkenny and Wexford rarely disappoint, and there was a lot at stake here. I mean, potentially Wexford were going down to the Joe Donagh, and many people in Wexford, both before and after the game, said to me yesterday, this was the biggest game Wexford ever played, even bigger than the final that probably many people will know from 96, maybe not as many from 68. That's how they viewed the game yesterday, and they really ratcheted it up. They had sing at the crossroads, they had Bull of Vogue, they brought out Anthony Kearns, the member of the Irish Tenors, to sing Bull of Vogue as Wexford came out in the field. It was fantastic. No credit to Wexford, they drummed it up because the supporters had literally fallen out of love with their Wexford hurlers. But the love-in started when the final whistle went yesterday. It was a great occasion and was something that should have been aired at least on GAA Go. It was a big missed opportunity. Somebody has got to answer that.
Nickey, can you talk us through the game? Because the pressure that Wexford were under going into this game, knowing that if Antrim beat Westmeath, that they were gone. Like, what sort of pattern did the game follow? Did we see any nerves from Wexford, or did they just horse into it?
Oh no, there was big nerves from Wexford, but Kilkenny started off without three starting players. Richie Reid was missing, Paddy Deegan was missing, and they were both injury concerns. And Billy Ryan, they decided not to start. Brought in Pádraig Walsh, Walter Walsh, and Billy Drennan. And but from an early stage, Wexford were very, very nervous. Kilkenny bagged 2 early goals through Owen Cody and Mossy Keoghan, and Mossy, scoring his goal, pulled his hamstring, so he was off. Then they lost Darden Mullen with what appears to be a fractured thumb, the top part of his thumb, and then lost Adrian Mullen, Mikey Butler, yeah. And Mikey, in fact, was limping a bit on one side of the field, and as he was limping, his marker ran over to the other side of the field, obviously waiting, and Mikey obviously ran over after him, but ran over on whatever damaged leg he had, and probably compounded the problem. So he was on crutches leaving the dressing room yesterday. So very likely that Butler and Mull and Keoghan are likely to be missing the Leinster final. So aside from losing the game, it was very costly. But to be fair, that discommoded Kilkenny. They did lose their shape with the loss of those 3 guys, and Wexford came back very well. Now, it probably helped Wexford that they went man on man early on, but realising that Kilkenny were walking through them, they let D. O'Keefe become a bit more defensive, and that certainly steadied them. and they had a fantastic finish to the first half, and in fact led by a point at half time. You couldn't have seen that midway through the first half. And sure, look, it was just drama galore in the second half. Wexford went 7-up. Kilkenny looked dead in the water, and then Kilkenny went in with Owen Cody and Tom Phelan back in goal. So it was just it was rip roaring stuff that had the crowd on their feet. And I mean, the Wexford people were just, they were cheering like never before. I mean, this was just such a big deal to them. And to be fair to Kilkenny, while they already had got the Leinster final ticket, they absolutely gave it everything. And look, it was very tight at the end. TJ was blown for a hand pass. Now, that you couldn't see it too well last night. They showed it very briefly. It went across to Alan Murphy, who flicked it into the back of the net. Now, look, margins are small in these games, and maybe one or two other calls might went their way. But for the passion that Wexford brought on and off the field today, you couldn't begrudge them the victory, to be honest about it. But it was a great occasion.
Nicky, you might just move to your right hand side a small bit there, but while we're chatting as well, there must have been some outpouring of emotion after the game from the Wexford people. I saw a clip going around of Conor McDonald catching a puck out, putting the ball down into the beach, I'd say, drubbing about 200 yards over the stand. But there must have been, like, you've been involved with clubs and different things where there's maybe been relegation at stake. Like, there's no pressure like that pressure, and I'd imagine there was some outpouring of emotion after.
Of course there was. Who would want to be part of a panel of players who history would show were relegated down to Joe McDonagh? Now, Joe McDonagh was a great friend of mine and one of the great hurling men that ever was, and it's right that a competition is named after him. But right now, Lee McCarthy is tier 1 and Joe McDonagh is tier 2. And these Wexford players did not want to have their names etched on a piece of paper or somewhere to say these were the guys down. And the worry they had, as Tom Dempsey said to me afterwards, the worry was that if you go down there, you know, there's no guarantee that you're going to get up. It could take 2 years to get back up, and that makes the current crop of players 2 years older. And are they going to be the same players when they come back to senior, albeit a route through the Lee McCarthy Cup via the Joe McDonagh, the two finalists, as we know ourselves. But nevertheless, it was simply just relief all around, and just Wexford did not want this to happen. They got unbelievable flack in their country through local media in the past 2 weeks. I mean, even they got criticised for the poor crowd turning up for the under-20 match against Offaly in Netwatch Cullen Park, 4-1 out by Offaly. And this was something that this gets in on the players. You can say you block out the noise and all the rest, but nah, the real world is, you know what's going on. And you know, management, county board officials, they got terrible flack, and there was an immense sigh of relief when the final whistle went. I can assure you, in Wexford Park, it was a great place to be yesterday evening. To be honest about it, look, disappointing from a Kilkenny point of view to have gone on winning, and we don't have a great record against Wexford in recent times. They've beaten us last year in the Leinster Championship. They beat us this year in the Leinster Championship. We considered a hell of a big score yesterday, so Kilkenny have a lot of reflecting to do going forward in this championship.
Yeah, Nicky is interesting there. A couple of minutes ago, I was talking, myself and Michael were talking about how Offaly in their final group game, they made 12 changes and obviously saving players for the final. For Kilkenny, they didn't need to win here, and obviously the integrity of the competition, you want them to go full board against Wexford, especially for Westmeath's sake. But by Kilkenny putting out a strong team and all the injuries that you've named, are they now harming their chances for 2 weeks' time in the Leinster final?
Well, look, at these things in a match. I mean, they stood down Richie Reid, who was not fully recovered from concussion. Paddy Deegan had been carrying a big injury, and while he played the last day, they needed him a little bit more time. And you know, there wasn't they were in the Leinster final. So to be fair, Billy Ryan's change was tactical. So Kilkenny put out their strongest possible team. What they had not bargained for was losing 3 players in the first 25 minutes. So I mean, it's not in Kilkenny's DNA to put out a weakened team from that perspective. And anyway, I think Derek would always have said any one of his first 26 has got to be seen as a team player. You know, number 25 or 26 could be a starter in any game. And from the extended panel, Richie Hogan and Mikey were brought on to the squad yesterday. They didn't get game time. So look, they're two lads that have played at the highest level as well. So Kenny don't do weakened teams, and I think we showed good respect to the competition and to Wexford. And look, it was a ball always between the teams at the end, really. So it could have gone either way. And maybe Wexford just needed that win that little bit more. And in the way they won the last couple of possessions, it was clearly a team that was hell-bent on not being part of history for the wrong reasons.
Can I just ask you, Nickey? I have to say I thought it was really peculiar that the Kilkenny Wexford game was put back 10 minutes. I don't care if there was 40,000 people going into Wexford Park. I think all of those games should have thrown in at the exact same time and finished within 60 seconds of each other. Were there hordes of people going into Wexford Park, and do you think the other games should have been delayed by 10 minutes as well as a result? Because Wexford knew their fate with 10 minutes to go. They knew what they had to do, if you get me. And I personally, I don't think that was the right thing.
I think that's a very fair point. Indeed, that was a lot of the chat up in the area before the match. Would it be delayed? I'm puzzled as to why it was delayed. I mean, there was just over 9,000 there. I mean, Kilkenny played Wexford in the Welsh Cup earlier in the year with the turning on of the lights. There was 15,000 there. So I'm a bit puzzled as to why there was a delay. And we were wondering, will all the other matches be delayed? Well, particularly the one in Mullingar. There was possibly less reason for the one in Croke Park, given that possibly TV scheduling there. But the one in Mullingar should have been held up for 10 minutes in line with the one in Wexford Park. And I think it's probably something for the GAA to look at going forward, because you're quite right. Wexford knew their fate 10 minutes into the end of that match. And I'd be surprised if Derry didn't get a message to the lads. And maybe that's why, just what I'm after saying, in the latter stages, Wexford players really, really went for it big time towards the end of the match when it looked like the game was slipping away. Perhaps they knew at that stage what the situation was. But it's something the GAA will have to look at, because there's a reason why all these games are put on at the same time. But now if there's an issue arises like what happened, I don't know. I was surprised there was a delay in throwing. Obviously, I was inside the ground, so I can't honestly say what it was like outside the ground. But at a crowd of just over 9,000, that shouldn't be an issue in a big ground like Wexford or Nolan Park or anywhere else for that matter to accommodate a crowd coming in.
Yeah, John S. says, Michael, the traffic around Oilgate yesterday was brutal and there were delays around on the way in.
Now, to be fair, the traffic around Oilgate is always brutal. That's a fact, even on a quiet day. But I just wonder, was there a bit of a stroke going on, someone in power in Wexford Park, like the day you let the grass grow in Crow Park,
Get out of it. Yeah. For those that are watching, that was 2006. But some other day, I'll happily come on and give you the whole logo on that one, where I was an innocent party. But look, the guy who came in on the text there, look, he was obviously outside the ground. I was not outside the ground, to be fair. I was in early, and it might very well be that there was a crowd close to the 2:00 throw-in. I mean, I was in there relatively early. There's a Joe Butler with a text on there now, and I was in the ground probably around 12:30, and there was little or no activity around it at that stage. The texter is spot on, but could be in a crowd outside at 2:00. So I'm not prepared to say that there wasn't a reason for it. I'm just surprised with a crowd of 9,000. But that's better. The bottom line is that the Mullingar game and the Wexford game should have absolutely started at the same time. I'm less worried about the one in Croke Park, because the result there was not going to have a big bearing on the bottom end of the table.
Nickey, what was the reaction of Darragh Egan? Like, he was under huge pressure coming into this game. The commentary, even from around the country, has been, well, that's the end of Darragh Egan now. So whether it is or it isn't, like, the pressure was stacked up on him.
Yeah, absolutely brutal. And I mean, he was well aware of the flack they took. He was obviously in chatting to us after the game. He would have been uncomfortable with that, would have been annoyed with that. But at the same time, he recognised that what happened the previous week against Westmeath was was not acceptable at all. And I suppose you can understand, the reaction of supporters to a degree. But he knew that the players had not delivered and they had one final opportunity. And it was with immense relief after the game. And, he was very bullish after the game. And I put it to him that he sounded like a man that finished business down in Wexford Park. And he more or less said, well, obviously that's going to be up to somebody else. But certainly it's like a guy that felt that there was plenty of people down there would probably send him back up the road to Tipperary and not want to see the back of him again. But at the same time, he came across to me as a guy who he's a good guy, Darragh Egan. Now, let's be honest about it. He's a very honourable, decent guy and worked very hard, and things just went a little bit off the rails for him a bit this year. But he managed to get it back on track in time, and I think he would want to stay down there. Not sure there's an obvious replacement roster moving up in the 20s if Keith is ready for that yet. So they may have to, and as well as that on the Sunday game, I mean, Lee Chin was strong in his support for Darragh Egan and what he had done. So he appears to have a good bond with the players. He's a good guy. He works very hard, and I think he's with Keith. And look, they need to rethinking. I mean, for a county that is such a strong hurling county, as I spoke to Tom Dempsey yesterday, and All-Ireland in 68 and an All-Ireland in the mid-90s, that's a poor enough return for a strong hurling county. And maybe that's where Wexford need to start reflecting a little more why it's like that, and maybe always be focused on the most recent competition, the most recent game. But the picture is probably a bit bigger that needs to be reviewed in Wexford.
Yeah,
Shane, just on Darragh Egan quickly, his ability to conjure Lazarus-like recoveries is unbelievable in the last couple of years. Remember Dublin hammered in the Walsh Cup, they beat Limerick a week later in the first round of the league down in Wexford Park. Like, they looked in big trouble when Westmeath drew at them last year. They go out and beat Kilkenny a week later in Nolan Park. I think their first and only championship win in Nolan Park. Like, they were at an all-time low last Sunday evening when Westmeath beat them. And whatever, they were able to circle the wagons. I was chatting Rory Jacob the other day, and he said there was a 225-year commemoration up on top of Owlert Hill, going back to the 1798 rebellion. He said they were circling the wagons, and they obviously circled them fairly well because they pulled out a performance for the ages yesterday when the pressure was at its greatest. And there's not, obviously Nickey was there and he'd tell us a bit more, but I understand Lee Chin was just heroic, and Liam McGovern coming back from 2 cruciates, Dee O'Keefe as well. Like, all the elder statesmen, Nickey, by all accounts, seemed to really stand up when they were needed most.
Yeah, Chin was absolutely amazing yesterday. He won an awful lot of ball, a lot of hard ball. He got out in front of his men. He roamed out the field and won ball. If you look near the very end, he was out 40, 50 metres winning ball. I think the fact that B. O'Keefe and Kevin Foley were back on the team yesterday was a big factor as well. I'm not sure they were there the previous week. I think they brought on D. O'Keefe all right. That was a big factor. Now, they lost Shane Reck before throw-in with an injury as well. Probably would have been earmarked for Owen Cody. So look, they got a lot out of their big players, and on a day when their life was on the line here, they needed big players to stand up, and they did that. But look, Kenny gave a mighty performance as well in many respects. Not all of the players maybe they only lost the game by 2 points, and it was just a fantastic contest. And I just felt that Wexford, having that bit more to play for, just that marginally a little bit more to play for, was probably the factor in the end.
Joe Butler says there, maybe Wexford get too hyped up when they play Kilkenny. Is it their All-Ireland? So, just to take that, Nickey, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I said to Darragh Egan after the game yesterday, Darragh, if all your matches were played with the opposition wearing the black and amber, wouldn't that be great for Wexford? And he didn't disagree. That answers your question, Shane.
But Nickey, where do you think Kilkenny are at now? Because you've already outlined the injury situation. There's a couple of players that have emigrated from last year. A few more are coming through. Billy Drennan, Gro Dunn and Timmy Clifford, for example. They're the obvious ones. Where do you feel Kilkenny are at in the pecking order?
Well, I think now going into a Leinster final against Galway. Now, Galway will be a little bit bruised after yesterday as well. And they were well out of the game for long periods and will be happy to have come back. But, it was probably, while Dublin had to get the equaliser, I think Galway will be disappointed. And Henry would have alluded to that as well in his post-match and in the media this morning. But it's very hard to know. Kilkenny go in now likely without those 3 players for the Leinster final. I think Richie Reid and Paddy Deegan will probably be back, which will balance it a little bit. But they're going to have to look at how they want to reshape the team. Probably Conor Delaney will come in at back and the Mikey Butler. Richie Reid slots in to centre half back. They'll probably need a new midfield partner now for Paddy Deegan, whoever that's going to be. So it's going to be a change here if lads we won't know their injuries, the extent of their injuries until for a day or two. So that's where it is. Where are they in the pecking order? Look, Kilkenny, now it's going to be straight, not quite knockout from here in, but it's going to be, you're playing final, you want to win it. And Ling will not want to go into a Leinster final and not win the game. It's his first Leinster final as manager, and he'll want to win that. I dismiss Kilkenny any day of the week. They're capable of beating any team on any given day, but definitely their strength has been reached. Possible loss of a couple of players, I would say, and that could be a factor in the next while. How long those guys might be out, hopefully not at all, but they're all out for a number of weeks. It could be a problem because this championship is extremely condensed, and any county that suffers a spate of injuries, their future in the competition could be very much impacted by the extent of injuries and the absence of players, and that might possibly be Kilkenny at the moment that could be going into the next lot of games without some key players.
Isn't it gas, Nicky? The man beside me here reckoned like everyone was killing each other in Munster, and sure the boys in Leinster were going to be fresh coming into the All-Ireland stages. Kilkenny don't look too fresh at the moment. It's funny, we do actually go hard at it in Leinster, despite what some people would suggest.
Imagine if you had to play like me in Cork and Limerick as well, rather than teams that, let's be honest, aren't going to be challenging for All-Irelands.
Yeah, but that's not the question I asked.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, how much would the toll be then?
Well, Limerick didn't look too unfresh that they were playing Cork, having played Tipperary the previous week. I'm not sure Tipperary were unfresh either. I think they were not mentally maybe right for it. So I think they were tuned out a little bit, to be honest about it. And Tipperary will be the most disappointed of all the weekend. But you're right. Look, I mean, yesterday was pretty competitive down in Munster, and who knows? This could level up a fair bit. I mean, I would not dismiss Kilkenny, Dublin, or they should not be dismissed going forward in the championship. Any of these teams can make an impression on anything that Munster has to offer. Let's be honest about it. Yes, the Munster Championship has been at a bit higher tempo, and everything to do with the game is at a higher level at the moment. But look, it's amazing how it can level out, and that's just, it could very well happen over the next number of weeks as the concluding stages emerge as well. So I think, look, let the two final, let them be played out now, and we could be in for a cracking finale to the championship yet. Who knows?
Nicky,
and I wouldn't dismiss Leinster teams at all.
Just a quick question, Nicky, on Adrian Mullen. Were he to be missing for the Leinster final or more? Like he's probably nearly Kilkenny's most important player at the moment, maybe outside of TJ, or maybe sharing that mantle with him. If you were to be without him for a period of time, which it looks like he will be, that would be a colossal loss.
I agree with you. Yeah, well, look, Mikey Butler was an all-star last year. Adrian Mullen an all-star last year, and they're two guys. Martin Keown is a real goal-scoring threat for Kilkenny. He's a big, strong guy that's really after shaping up. And any players, Mullen in particular, he's a leader of the team out around the middle of the field now. He's able to help back the backs. He's able to set up play for individuals, and he's not just a scorer himself, but he's a real team player and a grafter, and has got physically very strong as well, so is able to hold the midfield area very well against physically strong opposition.
How good was TJ, Nicky?
Look, TJ Breed will start every match for Kilkenny. It's not being disrespectful to him to say he does not have the pace that he once had anymore. That's just unfortunately the way it happens when you get that bit older, as we all know. But he's still an important player, because while he mightn't be power all scores himself, he still is very astute in terms of his possession and in terms of what a player moving in at the far side of the field or in close proximity to lay the ball off. So that's why he's important. He will demand a lot of attention from opposing defenders. And in watching DJ, it might just leave an opening for another Kilkenny player, and that's why he's so important to Kilkenny still.